Hello Techlore community, and I hope your day is going well. Today I wanted to share a project with you called ZenCash, which is a privacy-oriented cryptocurrency with also a platform for messages and media. It's a very neat project and it really falls in line with what we talk about here on the channel. Here to speak to us about it is Rob. He is the leader of ZenCash. He's had a ton of experience, such as working with BitShares, BlockPay, zClassic, C-Stating, and obviously ZenCash. He's very passionate about animal welfare, economic empowerment, education, environment, and the list goes on. Clearly, Rob, you're pretty involved with the world, so you have a lot of stuff under your belt. I'm speaking for myself and my community when I say thanks for being here today, and we're all excited to have you. We're excited to hear what you have to say about ZenCash, since it really falls in line with what we talk about on the channel, which is privacy and security. Do you want to start off by giving us a summary, or yourself?
Totally, yeah. No, Henry, thank you so much. And that was a very generous introduction. So I really appreciate that. I'm happy to be here. And I love how you structured this and kind of deep diving into the project and then looking at trying to soliciting questions from your community and our community. I think that's really cool. So anytime we can bring communities together that have a lot in common, that's a win-win.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, no, that's really cool. And I'm happy to answer basically anything. I never like to so actually you could say maybe I'm a little lazy and I don't prep too much, but at the same time it's because I don't want there to ever be any restrictions or canned answers to anything. Yeah, so I think it's better and just more genuine when you throw anything out there and we just answer it on the cusp.
Yeah, and also it doesn't feel like when you do a scripted interview or anything, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So
totally agree with you on that. Exactly.
So it's awesome. As a casual question, can I ask how you got in the tech industry? Or blockchain technology?
Absolutely. I mean, my background initially at university was physics and mathematics, so tech was just at the core of it. And I think I chose physics because it was for me the hardest subject out there, and I figured I would beat myself up for a bunch of years at university with it, and that was kind of my entryway into it. And then got into programming, and computer science for me was an informal thing. And I have to give a lot of credit to the world we live in right now is pretty amazing, and I like to say we're standing on the shoulders of giants. But my computer science education was all for free online with like MIT's open courseware stuff.
Yeah. Harvard does something similar, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I absolutely love it and I support it, and I think this is the way that education is going in the future, where it's just free for anyone in the world, and there's no barriers. Like, you don't have to be an American to take an MIT computer science course, and I think that's pretty amazing. That is great. You can be anywhere in the world and be taking this stuff. So that's what got me into tech from an academic perspective. And then, you mentioned my background. For me, getting into Bitcoin was a big culmination of like my values and what I want to do in this world, just meeting reality. So which is really cool. So when I heard about Bitcoin from a Slashdot article back in 2010, I was just blown away and really happy to participate. And my participation didn't really start being active until about 2012, when I started evangelizing Bitcoin where I was at the time in Afghanistan. So that was pretty fun and different way to enter the industry of just going around and doing like seminars, teaching people about the technology.
Totally. That's awesome to hear how you got involved. And from the school perspective, because I'm currently a college student, it does seem like that is the way it's heading, even though I'm here physically. Eventually, I think it's going to move that way, and it's going to really spread how we teach. So it's great.
Yeah. So I teach a couple university courses right now, or I'm wrapping one up right now. I need this to make grades for the students, but it's on Bitcoin and blockchain applications and finance.
Do you have a link or anything to it?
Yeah, I could totally provide that.
Yeah, just send me a DM after this. I can put it in the comments section so people can check it out.
Yeah, it's at the University of South Carolina, and I have to say, so I, just being so busy, I didn't try to push to have it structured as one of these MOOCs, like these massively open online courses like Coursera and edX do, but I absolutely want to do that, and I think that's the future.
Definitely, go for it. I'll be following that project for sure. Moving to ZenCash, I'm sure you guys get this question a lot, so I thought it's important to ask what separates ZenCash from other privacy-oriented coins like Monero, Dash, ZCash, etc. Obviously, you guys have the messaging and media platform, which is extremely unique, and that's one of the reasons I thought it was awesome. But what are the fundamental differences in transaction privacy specifically?
Yeah. So I look at our differentiators. So at the full ecosystem level. So you've got the tech differentiators, which I think are very important as well. Like you mentioned, product differentiators. We have even just business differentiators. Like we're structured just differently than, say, the Bitcoin community, and we're structured way differently than the Monero community.
How so?
So the way, well, we have a 50-person professional team. Working in 7 business units. So we have our business units include a big engineering division that's broken into sub-departments. So we have software development for sure. We have QA and testing. We have an infrastructure department. And then we have a business development division. We have a marketing division, an operations division, R&D division. We have a finance and accounting division. Right, so we have a product development and user experience division. So even just our organizational structure is, I think, a big competitive advantage relative to a lot of other projects that are just less structured. And at the same time, we still have the community development stuff and the community outreach, the community grassroots stuff. So it's not like we lose the grassroots stuff of where we come from. We just augmented that with a very professional team that's kind of operating like high octane. So it's pretty fun. But going back to the tech differentiators, so yeah, as far as other privacy coins go, so we fall into the zero knowledge cryptography class of coins pioneered by ZCash and ZeroCoin before that, the academic paper. So the differentiator there is it all comes down to how you do your privacy or your anonymity. And we do it all within the protocol using zero knowledge cryptography, which is for sure the most advanced level of cryptography to obfuscate transactions and identities on chain. So that's really cool. That's a core differentiator. But then, so that's what keeps us different from, say, like Dash or Monero and these other crypto protocols, is that we don't just do like off-chain mixing like what Dash does, and we don't use the CryptoNote mixing engine that Monero and their offshoots use. We use the most advanced cryptography possible. But then even within our class, we have a variety of other projects that are doing this, of course, notably ZCash, which does an incredible job. But then we differentiate ourselves even from that by just going off in a different product direction, different use case directions. Like you mentioned, we have a chat protocol. We're building a domain fronting application. So our whole thing is we want to be censorship resistant across the board. So we built like TLS SSL into our protocol so that nodes can connect, or clients can connect to nodes, and nodes connect to other nodes in encrypted tunnels. So we obfuscate metadata that way. We're building really a domain fronting application. Yeah. So you can see the first suite of applications that we're building are all privacy oriented. And the purpose of this is to build a massively secure infrastructure. And then we start executing the second layer of our plans, which we just released a new white paper describing some of this stuff a couple of weeks ago, describing our sidechaining platform application. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on like on our technical domain, and we have a public Trello board which shows our roadmap. So I recommend everyone check that out if you're interested in the project.
Oh, that's awesome, for sure. I'll leave a link to it too in the description to the whole website, so they can check the whole thing out. Yeah, it's really interesting to see the differences between all the different privacy-oriented cryptocurrencies. And from what I can tell, it's the protocol itself rather than mixing or any other kind of way of working around the actual basic protocol. Exactly.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Okay. So we do a variety of protocol level anonymity features that are really important.
So for the viewers out there, a good way to describe this is Bitcoin is not anonymous. There's a public ledger. Everyone can read everything that's done. But a common technique used to make Bitcoin quote unquote anonymous is to mix it through tons of different addresses so that by the time it comes out, there's nothing really tied to your personal identity. So that's what a lot of coins do, and ZenCash is claiming that you don't have to do that. It's privacy oriented from the protocol itself. Tying into the messaging platform, ZenChat, how does your security stack up to the big name security messengers like Signal and Wire?
So I'll be bold and I'll say ours is the most secure, but it's the least user friendly. So that's the trade-off right now is security versus
it's still in development, so.
Yeah, exactly. So we have an MVP product on market right now, and it's really, if you absolutely require the most secure way of communicating with someone, you could use our chat tool. Now, what I'll say is, so our chat tool uses our zero knowledge cryptography, and it broadcasts your message across the blockchain by using these snarks. which obfuscate the information. So no one can see who's sending what to whom. So that's really important. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind, this is a blockchain publication thing. So the message is being committed to like one of these like no commitments or shielded addresses. So this is actually one theoretical issue that I have with our chat protocol. And this maybe isn't normal for someone working on a project to be pointing out all of the flaws up front, but I think this is important.
Definitely, you gotta address the problems.
Yeah, exactly. Your message is being broadcast across the chain and published like on the chain. It's just being published in a note commitment, which in maybe a future of quantum computers, they could potentially theoretically hack this stuff. Maybe you don't want your message published there. But for now, it works perfectly fine and safely. And we are pioneering some other chat applications that we could use, maybe on a sidechain solution. I would love to have like disappearing messages, but of course, the whole purpose of a blockchain is to publish immutable data to the world. So it's kind of in conflict with the idea of erasing messages. So I don't think that we're gonna put Signal or Telegram out of business tomorrow, but we're starting to pioneer blockchain-based messaging protocols that are very secure, at least right now.
For sure. I personally use Signal, and it would be awesome if there was a better solution, because as happy as I am with it, group chats, oh man. If you ever tried doing a group chat in Signal, it is the worst thing you're gonna ever try, because you have to create a new group. It's not very intuitive whatsoever, and then if you don't have Signal contacts, it just becomes even worse. So I'm always looking for new messaging platforms, so I have high hopes for you guys.
Thanks, me too.
I saw you guys partnered with IOHK a few months back. I didn't know what they were before researching ZenCash. Do you want to explain what IOHK is and what that means for you guys and why it's so important?
Yeah, totally. So IOHK is a company run by Charles Hoskinson, who's a prolific guy in this industry. So he was one of the founders of BitShares, founder of Ethereum, and then he was one of the big proponents of forking it to Ethereum Classic. Really just because he's a very values-driven individual, and he didn't like the idea of going back on the immutability principle of a blockchain. So he didn't like the whole Ethereum, the DAO fork that they did. And then he launched this company called IOHK, which is really a massive R&D shop for the industry. So it does what I think was a huge gap in the industry early on. Was we had a lot of engineers and really smart people that were building products quickly, but we didn't have necessarily a lot of organized like science R&D going on to kind of inform a future direction of where we're going. So what Charles did was he put together about, I think it was like 80 to 100 researchers around the world. They were talking guys with PhDs in cryptography, computer science, and mathematics, economics. And he brought them together into one company. He did a whole bunch of research grants to universities around the world. And they're tackling some of the biggest problems in the industry, like governance, scalability, side chaining. And by the way, all of the big things that we're trying to tackle as well. So it was just a very natural partnership for us where, early on, we just didn't have a lot of the R&D talent on staff, right? We were a small, lean, mean startup. And we couldn't afford to hire a bunch of resources all over the place. So what we did was we partnered with IOHK, and actually two of our really big R&D projects right now are maturing through them. So now we've built out our own engineering division now. So now we have our senior engineers working with the IOHK researchers to bring some really big projects to market. So we have a governance project with them, which is an on-chain voting system to manage our treasury resources. So it's kind of like half a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. It's not a full DAO because it doesn't govern how we do software upgrades, but it does govern how we use resources, which is a big step forward. And it's really cool because it uses like game theory research, and it uses our SNARK, zero knowledge cryptography, and it improves like the voting system. So it'll be the best in class voting system on the market once we bring that. We have it in prototype right now. And we have a huge scaling project with IOHK as well, which we have a group of mathematicians and cryptographers looking at some really interesting DAG protocols, these directed acyclic graphs, kind of like IOTA, but a next generation version of IOTA, which actually, so what IOTA does in all of the DAGs on the market right now is they have their transactions arranged into a tree structure, and they call that a DAG. what we're going to do is we're looking at packaging transactions into blocks, just like we currently do, but arrange the blocks into a tree structure. So it has a lot of really interesting security characteristics, because then we don't have to go away from proof of work, which is hands down the best security consensus protocol out there. So we don't want to go away with proof of work. So what we're doing is we're building a proof of work optimized DAG. So it's huge R&D, and if we can do this successfully, it kind of or pushes the tech frontier to the next generation. So I'm very excited about that.
For sure. Sorry about that. So thanks for talking about IOHK there. That really explains a lot, because if I may give advice, it didn't make much sense on the website what that meant for your partnership. So if maybe you guys could like show why that's so important and what it really means for you, that'd be really cool. Because I was really confused and I had to really read into it.
Yeah, and the final thing I'll say about IOHK, which maybe we should be more explicit about, is this is the engineering team or the tech team behind Cardano. So and Cardano.
No idea about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really big deal. So,
yeah. Kind of a side note, when I was checking out the website, it is freaking beautiful. So whoever made that website did an amazing job. You should give them a big raise, because it was great.
I know, it's pretty amazing. I completely agree. The team did an amazing job.
They really did. Now, something I just happened to catch was a feature in development called ZenHide, which is geared towards web traffic. What is this? Is it similar to Substratum? Is it supposed to be similar to what a VPN would do, or is it supposed to anonymize you more like Tor?
So it's different than those, but it's the same concept of we want to provide anonymity, or at least like censorship resistance for our users. And there's there's plenty of countries around the world that restrict their citizens from being able to access information around the world. So what we want to do is we want to provide a tool that helps users access our system without fear of repercussions. So it uses domain fronting application. So domain fronting is an application that allows you to basically obscure your access to some other site. So if you're trying to access our network, it'll look like you're trying to access, say, like Amazon Web Services or a Google server somewhere. And the most censorship-resistant way to do this is, if you have a government that's trying to restrict its citizens, well, they never restrict access to their own websites. So if you can make it look like a person's trying to access one of their government websites, but they're really accessing the Zen network, that's a huge win for us. So that's what we're building right now. And there's a whole variety of ways to do that. There's trade-offs in it. And unfortunately, some of these big tech companies are kind of cracking of these that are honestly quite repressive. So that's not cool, but we're hoping to be able to circumvent that.
That wraps up all the questions that I had and my community. So now I actually posted on the ZenCash subreddit and asked if they had any questions, and they wanted to know a bit more about ZenGrid and ZenExchange. Do you want to elaborate on those a bit?
Absolutely. So, this starts from this new white paper that we released a couple weeks ago. And I have to say, so our strategy now is we're not doing these big monolithic white papers. We're doing white papers specific to a particular technology that we're working on. So this white paper was all about our proposed sidechaining solution. So our sidechaining solution that will be running on our new node class. So right now we have these secure nodes, and we just introduced the idea of super nodes. And the super nodes will be running sidechains and actually be performing kind of like master node functions, but more secure and a broader set of master node functions. So the first function that these super nodes will be doing is they're going to be tracking and monitoring all of the other secure nodes. So now we can migrate all of the logic of the secure node tracking and payment system on chain instead of having it done externally on server clusters. So that was a really big deal for us in the censorship resistant stuff of you want everything on chain ultimately to be truly robust. But then what this opened the door for with sidechaining is a whole platform system. So rather than just being a cryptocurrency and like a privacy-oriented cryptocurrency, now we're going to be a security-oriented platform, which is huge from a use case perspective. The vision here is we want to open up like a Google Play Store or an Apple app store.
Yeah.
We want like a Zen app store where
you guys have like a suite.
Yeah, exactly. So these are really just two of the first apps that we're looking at building with our own team.
That's really cool.
So so the first app would be ZenGrid, and ZenGrid it's a clever way of utilizing the processing power that we have on the network currently. So we have, I think, probably the second most or largest cryptocurrency network in the world. So we exceeded Bitcoin in terms of nodes, and we're pushing up against Ethereum's limit right now with their node count. So the recognition here was, well, let's start doing something with the nodes other than just processing these transactions that come in, asynchronously. Let's actually try to maximize the economic utility of our network, because ultimately we want to create a kind of like a virtual nation where we have a whole bunch of people, we have a virtual economy, and there's a whole lot of different ways to participate and earn a living. So we want as many revenue streams from outside the ecosystem to come in the ecosystem to create value. And the first obvious case was, well, we have all of these machines, like over 10,000 machines in the network, almost 11,000 machines. But let's start using them. So, ZenGrid was, we're going to start renting out processing power for all these machines in the network and create another way for basically enterprise clients to come in and rent computational power on our network and pay our node operators. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one of those ideas I hear, and I'm just like, man, it's just so, how do I say this? It's just so ahead of it's just nothing we've ever thought about doing, and it's just something so radically different that it's just so cool to hear about that, because you're pretty much creating a whole new digital, I can't put my word on it, but
we're trying to create a digital society, but ultimately is where the digital society meets the real world society is where the value is. And that's what we want to do, is we want to bring these things together. We don't just want to be operating in like some virtual, kind of closed off society that just crypto nerds love. We love the crypto nerds, we're crypto nerds, but we want to create a real enterprise here for like anyone in the world to come participate. And ultimately we need to make people's lives better around the world. Yeah. And how do you make people's lives better is you provide them opportunity.
Got it.
So that's what we're trying to do ultimately. The other thing that you mentioned was the ZenExchange. This is, so if we want to be a full ecosystem, we have to have an exchange in the ecosystem. Right now, we rely on a dozen or so other exchanges that we're on, and we're going to keep getting on dozens of more exchanges. That's a big part of our business development. But at the same time, we want to now build our own peer-to-peer exchange, because going peer-to-peer decentralized is absolutely critical. And now we have so many resources that we could now throw at this exchange concept. And the big thing here for me in particular is ultimately I want our ecosystem to blend with the real world ecosystem. And people talk about merchant adoption. The reality is merchants are not going to adopt cryptocurrency until we solve the exchange rate issue for them. Because a merchant sells merchandise or services. They're not going to play the role of cryptocurrency speculator or currency trader. And if a merchant has their supply chain, all of their employees earning US dollars, they're not going to take Bitcoin or Zen, for the majority of the business, because there's an exchange rate mismatch there. Yeah. Their revenue stream has to be matched to their outflow stream, or it's not a viable business. So we know this. So that's why, I was part of the cryptocurrency startup called BlockPay, where I think we were a few years ahead of what was reasonable, in my opinion, where we tried pushing hard for merchants, but it was too early. So now what we need to do is we need to create price stable assets. That's kind of the big thing of 2018 is you have this big influx of companies trying to build price stable assets, which are essentially like, we want a Zen dollar. And a Zen euro, Zen silver, a Zen gold.
So like a USDT kind of?
Yes, we want a USDZ.
Got it.
For Zen. But essentially what it is if members of our ecosystem want US dollar exposure for a variety of reasons, maybe they're a merchant, I don't want them to have to sell their Zen to get that. I'd rather keep it all in the ecosystem and grow the value of our ecosystem. So what we want to do is we want to build an exchange that now can build a market for our own USDZ, which would essentially be like a dumb simple or a dumb smart contract that just takes a bundle of Zen as collateral and dynamically adjusts it so that it's always equal to roughly about $1.
Okay.
So it's basically a contract, like a synthetic dollar contract. And now we can start using these synthetic dollars, these USDZs, for a massive merchant outreach campaign.
Okay.
So this is the big vision. And that's my personal big motivation for the decentralized exchange. There's other decentralized exchanges out there, but I want our own so that we can build these synthetic products. Like I want a whole suite of synthetic products. I want people to be able to stay within the Zen ecosystem and not have to go out, because then we can start building products using these synthetic products, other synthetic contracts,
sure.
And it just snowballs from there. And so it could be a huge enterprise.
Yeah, it's like being the Google of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the vision.
On the topic of exchanges, the subreddit, obviously you're talking about the crypto nerds. I'm sure lots of the subreddit users are the crypto nerds. I'm the crypto nerd. They were asking about what are your plans about larger exchanges, like Binance was specifically mentioned. Do you see Binance as a competitor to ZenExchange, or would you guys more work together, and would you offer Zen on Binance?
I can say that we have an amazing and very active business development division, and all they do every day is go out and try to get us new exchange listings and new partnerships and new use cases for Zen. They're doing an amazing job, and you'll see every 2 weeks we do a bi-weekly live stream.
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, we inform the community on everything we're doing because we want to be as transparent as possible. And every 2 weeks we always have new listings that we advertise. Now, the problem is if we're in negotiations for a new listing, we can't talk about it because we're on NDA, right? So there's a lot of deals in the pipeline that we're NDA'd on, so we just can't really release information. So I can't even talk about specific exchanges, but what I can say is, for sure, we have a huge outreach program for getting listed. And especially now with other partnerships that we have in the industry that have ownership of other exchanges, it's accelerating even faster. It's just, besides being a humble group where we don't like to, talk about things ahead of time, in this case, legally, we can't.
Got it.
So,
would you be able to say if you guys are competitors with major exchanges out there, or are you trying to compete with them with ZenExchange, or are you just trying to create your own suite so it's an option to be part of a suite?
Yeah, so I would say it would be, what's the word, more collaborative or synergistic than competitive. Yeah.
That answers that, I guess. They also asked about ASICs. So for those of you who don't know watching, ASICs are dedicated devices with a sole function of mining cryptocurrencies. In general, they don't have a good vibe in the crypto community because the companies that sell them are able to use them themselves, which creates a form of centralization. The privacy coin Monero recently hard forked to cut out ASICs pretty much altogether. Does ZenCash allow ASICs, and where do you guys stand on that? Because they're not necessarily a bad thing for the community, but every person has a different outlook on ASICs.
Yeah, so you nailed it right there. So it's not necessarily a bad thing for the community, and our message is, guys, like, calm down. This is not a crisis. So first of all, this is not a crisis, and we don't have to be forced to make a decision without understanding the full consequences of that decision. So the reality is that there are consequences to doing a hard fork, period. Hard forks are messy, or can be messy, and you don't want to ever rush these things without due diligence. The second thing is there could be consequences of swapping out a core algorithm. So if we're going to do that, we want to know exactly what we're doing. So I'll say we completely sympathize with the GPU miners in our community. They're a huge part of our community. And we also sympathize with the ideal of decentralization. And ideally, you wouldn't even want GPUs. Ideally, you would just want every CPU in the world to be able to mine your currency competitively. So the core of what we did was we adopted Equihash from ZCash, because we wanted to be ASIC resistant, and we still value that. So if we can be, ASIC resistant in like a safe way, we're going to do that. So right now, all we're trying to tell people is, we want open community discussion. We really don't have a massive crisis right now. This does open some theoretical new risks to the project. If you have a single ASIC developer or ASIC manufacturer that's monopolizing all of their own equipment and dominating mining, for sure, that's a risk. We recognize that risk. but we also recognize other risks, and we recognize the broader ecosystem we want to be healthy and stable. So we are looking at all of our options right now, including talking to mathematicians to work on our own unique algorithm. It's just that if we're going to swap out an algorithm, we want it to be a useful swap and a safe swap, and one that's actually meaningful. So we are for sure looking at all the options. And in my ideal world, I would love for us to pioneer a new algorithm that will be forever ASIC resistant. In fact, I would love for us to pioneer an algorithm that would allow CPUs to be competitive miners. So if we can go down that route, that's amazing. And we're going to put some resources and attention into it. We'll see where it takes us.
All right. I'm sure they're going to love to hear that.
I hope so.
Kind of the last question, I think, at the subreddit, the main question they asked, they had a lot of questions that I don't think you'd be able to answer for the similar reasons of the Binance question. This was a really interesting question. They asked, are you guys planning on shifting the decimal point of Zen, or at least how I understand it?
Yeah.
So at least how I understand it, it will be easier for users to be able to keep track of prices, unlike Bitcoin, where if I go to the grocery store, I have to send them 0.000012 Bitcoin to purchase milk. Would shifting the decimal point, is that actually something you guys are considering in order to combat that?
It is, and I'll tell you, it's my preference to do it. So I actually asked our engineers a few months ago to start looking at this problem. Now, if we were just Bitcoin and the Bitcoin protocol, we could have done it, in maybe a week or two turnover. But because we actually have shielded addresses, we want to make sure that we do this in a safe way, where if we do a decimal point shift, we don't want there to be anything broken. For instance, if you have a whole bunch of resources and shielded addresses, which are basically note commitments, we don't want those note commitments to be kind of broken where, the base layer, currency has this decimal shift, but then the note commitments don't, and which would be a huge loss for anyone parking resources and note commitments. So we actually started looking at it, realized we got a little sidetracked. Or not sidetracked, we just have a huge priority list of things and limited resources. So it's on our priority list. It's not top priority. We actually have another hard fork scheduled to go out at the end of June. So getting that hard fork squared away was our top priority. But from the economics perspective, it makes complete sense to shift the decimal place. So it's something we want to do. I think I would much rather pay for a coffee in 1 Zen than 0.001 Zen, right? That makes complete sense. So we definitely, at least my perspective, I want to do it. Now there's probably some other people in the community and team that are a little hesitant. So we're trying, like everything we do, you can see we're trying to move away from reactionary and just do things quickly without thinking about it. We're trying to have a nice little mix of, rapid products to market, but also like deep thinking and R&D, and not just rushing things that could have consequences.
That's how it should be, and I think that's one of the problems with the cryptocurrency market right now. There's so many decisions or lack of decisions being made, and without much thought, and there's not much development going into it.
Actually, you know what? Back to the whole ASIC thing. There's a variety of other projects that now are like racing to prove how badass they are by going and claiming they're going to swap out algorithms to be ASIC resistant. And I would say that these guys are making a mistake and just rushing that decision. Now, this is something, of course, we would all love to do, but why would you commit to a decision up front? I guarantee you, none of these projects have mathematicians on board who even understand the algorithms they're talking about, yet they're talking about swapping them out. So I think that's just irresponsible.
Yeah. I think that wraps up all the questions I have about ZenCash itself. Maybe just a final broad question. I think after talking to you, I kind of know the answer, but do you think blockchain and cryptocurrencies will revolutionize the world? Why or why not?
Absolutely. They for sure will. So the whole thing about what we're doing is we're creating a credible way to remove third parties from things. Basically, from anything you can think of that has a third party, we're trying to create ways to be able to remove that third party, essentially Uberize everything. And if we can Uberize finance and economics, these are really big things. If we can Uberize governance in a way where we start thinking about governance as a service instead of just a monopoly, this is also extremely interesting. So yes, we're going to keep going down this road, and we're going to make some big disruptions across industries and even the way that societies are organized, in my opinion. Now, I'll caveat this with there's probably, if across functional areas, some limitations to the technology where maybe the centralized version of stuff actually still has merit and has value for efficiency reasons or heritage or whatever.
For sure.
So we're probably going to see a mixed world in the future, and I think that's cool.
Yeah,
you know?
I think there's centralized projects out there like Ripple, for example, that I think are very important to connect the real world and the cryptocurrency world. And I have to agree with you on lots of your points with how it might change the world. When you said Uberize without the tracking. That should be your that should be your slogan.
Thank you for saying that. That's really cool. I like that.
I think that's all I have left to say, Rob. You did really awesome. It was great to talk to you. You made everything super easy to understand. I'm pretty excited to keep up with the future of your project, ZenCash. And do you have any final thoughts, questions, or comments before we wrap this up?
No, thank you very much, Henry. I appreciate the opportunity. And the closing thought I always tell people is, if you like anything that you've heard, please come check us out. I know you're providing all the links, and you'll come to our website, you'll basically find everything, but just check it out. And not just check it out as a bystander, but if you want to participate in any way, we try to keep an active forum where we want to keep it open to the community to pitch ideas, participate, get some resources to do that. Please do. There's a number of ways to contribute, and please join the fun.
For sure. I mean, lots of these questions on here were taken from their subreddit. So if you want to be a part of that, definitely go there. And that's it. There you have it, folks. There is something pretty new for all of us. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. This is definitely something I haven't really done before. Definitely check out ZenCash yourself through the links in the description. Thank you again for your time, Rob. It was a pleasure talking to you. And for those still watching, have a Lemericious day.